Welcome to Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. If you're in Dallas, you can listen in on the airwaves to Beyond Bows and Arrows, the longest-running Native radio show in Texas. In Tulsa, Sarah Lease keeps listeners informed of Native issues on Tulsa station KOSU. And Colton Prince broadcasts to listeners all over the world from his bedroom in Alaska. We're marking National Radio Day today, talking with Native producers who are passionate about radio. We'll hear more after the news.
This is National Native News. I'm Antonia Gonzalez. On St. Lawrence Island in the Bering Sea, the remote village of Savunga has long struggled with limited jobs and food security. A new reindeer processing facility hopes to help change that. KNOM's Wally Rana visited the site to learn more about how the development could benefit the community while also connecting Savunga with its history.
Just steps away from the crashing waves of the Bering Sea, a new structure rises beside the sandy beach. Workers from Finnish construction company Comatose hammer and drill away on the rooftop of the facility. The company specializes in modular food processing facilities and is working alongside local hires from Savunga. The workers are putting the finishing touches on a large white facility destined to become the village's new reindeer processing plant. Benjamin Pengawi is the president of the Savunga Tribal Council. He says the new facility will kick off a number of opportunities for the village of 800.
Making hope that if we expand over the decades, we would hopefully bring in some employment from the Nome area and some of the villages. That some of the funds that, if they accumulate, we could start a little youth camp.
The facility will be run by the Savunga Reindeer Commercial Company, or SRCC. The history of reindeer in Savunga goes back over a century. When a Presbyterian missionary brought a small herd to the island, the herd grew and eventually migrated east to what would become Savunga.
The herd wanted to linger on the east side because of the food abundance, and the initial herders thought that they should send 4 apprentices to watch the reindeer. And those 4 men looked at Savunga. From there, they start getting their relatives to move in.
Over a century later, Pengawi says the facility aims to carry that legacy forward by creating jobs, supporting food security, and keeping reindeer at the heart of Savunga's identity.
So we're hoping to bring up a little island employment, both villages. You know, the younger generation could continually benefit from that.
Once operational, the U.S. Department of Agriculture will inspect the facility. If approved, reindeer produced in Savunga could earn the coveted USDA certified label. The designation lets customers know that animals were raised appropriately and are safe to eat. In Savunga, I'm Wally Rana.
For over a century, the Santa Fe Indian Market has been a spotlight for some of Indian country's most talented artists to shine. From crafts to fashion, as KJZZ's Gabriel Pietrozio reports, 1,000 juried artists from more than 200 tribes descended upon New Mexico over the weekend.
What's so great about Santa Fe Indian Market is that you can meet the artists, and that supports so many livelihoods.
Among them was Naomi Glasses and her brother Tyler.
It's a good time to just go out and find pieces that speak to you.
They're both Danette and just released a new collection this week with Polo Ralph Lauren.
I'm over the moon about it, doing cartwheels and flips inside. I'm excited for it to get out there in the world and for everyone just to see what this whole collection is about.
His sister, Naomi, was named the company's first artist in residence in 2023.
I'm fortunate enough to be able to collaborate with companies that I'm able to design something and then they're able to manufacture it. I also still do my beautiful hand-woven goods that I sell at markets like Santa Fe.
She says if you love wearing native art, buy directly from indigenous designers.
Authenticity is what really matters, and I really hope that more companies learn from the model that we did with Polo Ralph Lauren. I really want to see more of that.
For National Native News, I'm Gabriel Pietrozio.
And I'm Antonia Gonzalez.
National Native News is produced by Koahnic Broadcasting Corporation with funding by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Support by the Colorado Plateau Foundation, supporting Native-led initiatives protecting plateau lands, waters, and cultures by building networks, community, and organizational capacity. Grant proposals accepted through September 5th at coloradoplateaufoundation.org. Skugtash. For more than 40 years, Ramona Farms has revived ancient traditional foods, tepary beans, pinoli, polentas, and more, all from store.ramonafarms.com. Ramona Farms supports this show. Tom Yang.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.
This is Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. Colton Prince was only 14 years old when he started his own internet radio station in his bedroom in Anchorage. The Athabascan and Inupiaq teens' passion for radio continues 2 years later. Prince reaches a global audience playing rock and pop music all day on his station 98.5 Music Alaska. We'll hear from him this hour. And in Dallas, Texas, another radio enthusiast continues to host a mix of traditional Native music and commentary after more than 40 years. We'll talk with the founder of the Beyond Bows and Arrows show coming up. And we'll hear from a Native journalist who discovered a love for audio storytelling while reporting on Indigenous issues in Oklahoma. Today is National Radio Day, a day set aside to celebrate the medium. And of course, we want to hear from our listeners today. That's you. So please tell us, how important is radio in your community? You can share comments and questions by calling 1-800-996-2848. That number is also 1-800-99-NATIVE. Let's now meet our first three guests. Joining us from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma is Sarah Lease. She is the Indigenous Affairs reporter at KOSU. She is Turtle Mountain and Diné. Sarah, hello. Welcome to Native America Calling.
Hello. It's great to be here celebrating radio, which we both love.
We sure do. Yeah, thanks for joining us. Also joining us from Oklahoma, Colony, Oklahoma, we have Albert Oldcrow. He is the Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribal Council Coordinator and host of Beyond Bows and Arrows on KNON in Dallas, Texas. He is Southern Cheyenne. Albert, hello to you as well, and welcome to our show.
What an honor to be here. Thanks for inviting me onto the air.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show, Albert. And joining us from Anchorage, Alaska is Colton Prince. He is the owner of 98.5 Music Alaska. He is Athabascan and Inupiaq. Colton, good morning. Welcome to Native America Calling.
Good morning. It feels good to be here bright and early, ready to go.
I agree. I'm really excited about this show today. And Sarah, I want to begin with you because you didn't initially envision working in radio as a journalist, but after working as the Indigenous Affairs reporter at KOSU for the past year, tell us how your perspective on audio storytelling has changed.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think I've always been drawn to being able to tell stories sort of through an out-of-the-box way of thinking, whether that's through visuals, now through audio, just really thinking of different ways to get people more engaged with storytelling. And now working at KOSU for over a year now, it's been really great to kind of remember that as Indigenous people, storytelling is so integral. I know, especially for my home communities, and thinking about just the importance of how we share stories. And like I said earlier, I get to be creative in how I do this. I get to think about how close I get my mic up to like a running stream or a cow mooing, or it's a great medium to really be creative, to be thoughtful, and to just kind of connect again with my indigeneity. It all just comes full circle.
And Sarah, what is it about radio that makes it's such a compelling medium as opposed to television or print media? What does it offer that those other media don't?
Well, I think again, like you have to approach how you tell it in a way that will intrigue audiences. And often that is through creating a scene to really get people immersed into where you are, what you're experiencing, what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and being able to sort of have whoever's listening envision this world with you. And I think as long as audio storytelling continues to do that and to feel personal, to feel welcoming, like I think this medium is going to be around. And I know when I was a college student back in like 2016, that's how I got up in the morning, was listening to different news organizations, their podcasts. I'd be putting on my mascara, but I'd be getting informed. I didn't have time necessarily to sit down, watch a CBS broadcast news package, but I had time to multitask, to listen to radio and to get ready and listen to radio on the bus. You know, I would just, that was sort of my morning routine to get informed, but also to be immersed in these stories.
I'm glad you mentioned also being a consumer of radio, because now that you work in radio, does it change your perspective as a consumer as well?
Yeah, I think, well, now it's sort of like I listen to stories in a different way. Like sometimes I'm just wondering, oh, they must have had to get really close to this source to get this audio. And I feel like maybe the way that I listen to stories now is more of like a behind the scenes listener, wondering how they may have pulled off this certain story, or, you know, I wonder how they got in contact with this source, or so it's more, maybe it's a bad thing because I get a little distracted in in the process instead of like fully being immersed in the story. So I think it's twofold. So I think it's sort of, I have to turn off my producer brain to listen to a story and really enjoy it, because sometimes I just get too carried away. The journalist, the creator of me is like, wait, I need to know how they did X, Y, Z.
Well, now you know how the sausage gets made, so I'm sure it influences a lot of what you do. Now, Sarah, you recently won an Indigenous Journalists Association award, and it's in regard to a story that features the Wichita and affiliated tribes. Tell us more about that story and how you approached it.
Yeah, that's a story that honestly has like stayed with me throughout just my career as a journalist because of how personal it was. And so to give a little context, this story, I had never worked with the Wichita and affiliated tribes yet. So I was pretty fresh in Oklahoma. I'd never been to their community, never met any of their tribal leaders. And I really, I wanted to see if I would be able to attend this memorial service for Kate Ross, who passed away at the Carlisle Indian Boarding School, was buried there, and was finally returning home to be buried with her relatives. And this was just such a powerful story, and I wanted to help share it if I could, but I also recognized, you know, this could be a private memorial. And so I reached out and I got a hold of the vice president of the Wichita and affiliated tribes, Tasha Musso. And first and foremost, I was like, I totally understand if this is private, I'm not allowed to be there. But is there by any chance I'm able to attend and record? And I got permission to be there. And while I was there, the wind through the trees during the Amazing Grace song that I heard, like I couldn't help but cry. Both of my grandparents went to a boarding school, and I felt so connected, as I'm sure many Indigenous people can, to the story of what happened to our relatives at boarding school. And so it was really emotional for me, and I wanted to make sure I could capture this scene and share it with our listeners and really get them to realize why this matters. And so anyway, this story is something that I really approached with care. I ultimately ended up giving the audio recordings of the memorial, so all the songs that I heard, all the the memories I heard and testimonies about boarding schools, I just share that all with the tribal nation because, you know, these are their stories. And I was fortunate enough to be able to be a facilitator, but at the end of the day, they don't belong to me. And so I wanted it to be this sort of reciprocal process. So the story was essentially about Kate Ross, who got to be buried with her relatives, but it's also about this other boy, Alfred Charco, who is Wichita, and he also passed away at Carlisle. But unfortunately, they were not able to bring him home and bury him with Kate Ross. And it's a mystery to this day why they couldn't find Alfred Charco. They dug up the remains of this other young man who they thought was going to be Alfred, but the bones were of a much older person than Alfred, and they were like, this isn't him. So they had to rebury this indigenous boy, and they only had to go home with just Kate. And so this story really revealed this like faulty headstone system that Carlisle boarding school had, and also this history that this wasn't like the first time that they had dug up the remains of indigenous children and had to rebury them. That happened multiple times. There was a cemetery they were buried in before, and then it got moved, and then they had these new headstones. So there was just this whole process that ultimately caused the Wichita and affiliated tribes to return home with only one relative and have one still missing in Carlisle in the cemetery there. They don't know where he is, and it's been about a year now.
Sarah Lees kicking off our conversation here today on Native America Calling. She is the Indigenous Affairs reporter at KOSU. She's based in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. We have the phone lines open. We have producers who are standing by, and they're waiting for you to give us a call. We want to hear from our listeners. We'd like to hear why radio is important to you. Why are you listening to the show right now? Why do you listen to Native America Calling on a regular basis, or any of these other shows that we're talking about today? What keeps you tuning in? Tell us. 1-800-996-2848. That number is 1-800-996-2848. We're going to take a short break, and we will be right back and continue this wonderful conversation day on National Radio Day. Stay with us. Two changes in federal funding could have implications for Native women's health. The Trump administration is cutting funds to a long-standing program that guarantees women's access to birth control. And it's also cutting money to a maternal education program with proven results for Native women. We'll find out how the cuts impact Native women on the next Native America Calling.
My name is Tammy, and I'm a member of the Little Traverse Bay Band of Odawa Indians. Smoking gave me heart disease. I used to think of cigarette smoking as something that only affected me. Then at just 44 years old, I had to look into my mom's eyes on the way into emergency heart surgery and tell her, "Mommy, I promise I won't make you bury me." My tip is, think about the people in your life who love you. They go through the pain too, maybe even more than you do.
The people you love are worth quitting for. You can quit. For free help, call 1-800-QUIT-NOW. A message from the CDC.
Thank you for listening to Native America Calling. Today is National Radio Day, and we're celebrating Native people connected to radio news and entertainment. We're talking about the importance of radio to people on both sides of the mic. And we also want to hear from you, our listeners. What do you like about radio? You can join this conversation with a comment or question by calling 1-800-996-2848. That's also 1-800-99-NATIVE. Let's now talk with our next guest, Albert Old Crow, who joins us from Colony, Oklahoma. And Albert, your show, Beyond Bows and Arrows, it started in the early 1980s. You started at the show in 1996, so it's been almost 30 years. What's kept you involved all this time?
Just the fact that I am able to reach many people that don't have access to Native American music, all genres that is involved there, from traditional to contemporary, and it fills my cup.
Well, tell us more about how you structure the show, a typical show. What types of music and dialogue do you bring into the conversation? Who's your audience?
The audience, well, okay, let's roll back to the early 50s and 60s. Dallas, Texas was one of the relocation cities throughout the U.S., and a lot of the activities, we didn't know there was not much way to tell what was going on. And so Frank McLemore and Dennis Wakini got together and seen where there was a community radio station, KNON, that was starting up. And so they put in for a time slot, and they received that. And whenever they first started, they only had one album. A lot of our younger listeners don't know what an album is, but it was Chief Dan George, Proud Earth. And so that's the only music that they had. and so out of that, as of right now, just from the time I've been there, I have been blessed with people donating music, different drum groups, things of that nature. And I have a pretty good size array of music to draw from. And out of that, the team that I have, Jessica Johnson, Corey Worthen, and Cecil Higginbotham, they are a huge help. Jessica does the announcements every show, and it lets the people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area know what is taking place within the community. Because whenever I first came on, we didn't have access to the internet. That happened like 5-6 years later that we were able to get on the internet, and we've had listeners tune in from as far away as New Zealand.
Albert, in 30 years, you must have some memories, special moments, special guests. Tell us a few of them.
Okay. Yeah, the original building, it was a 2-story building that was about to fall down. I always joke and say that the radio equipment is what kept that building structure up and going, because we were in a racy part of town, and it was not unusual for us to hear gunshots. And homeless people would come into the building, and with it being an older building, the wood slats had cracks in them, and when you heard the door open, you could look through the cracks in the floor and see who came in.
Oh, geez. I hope you weren't in that building too long.
Well, we were there until I believe it was like 2003, 2004, and we moved to a different location, a much modern building. And then we moved to another building which was wiped out by a tornado. We missed the tornado by about 45 minutes. We got off the air at 8 o'clock, and about 8:45 is when it hit. The individual that had the show after us, he survived. It blew the windows out, and we were off air for, I'd say 72 hours, but then we relocated out to where the transmitter tower was, and it was full of scorpions. Jessica still talks about the scorpions. I mean, it was a real small, almost like it was a storage area is what it was, but we were there for maybe 3 or 4 months, and then we moved into our current location.
Okay. Now, you mentioned Jessica. She's part of your team?
Yes. She is the heartbeat of knowing what's going on in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Well, tell me more, because you said earlier Dallas was one of the original relocation sites. What's the Native community like in Dallas right now?
We have a very large community with many tribes represented, and what is surprising to me is that we have yet to have what I consider a super large powwow to take place in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And hopefully that will happen. Hopefully somebody will step forward and make that happen. We did have individuals that do put on local powwows, but it's more of a regional, it's not nationwide draw. But that's one of my hopes that would happen out of all of the tribes that there are there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Now, Albert, in addition to Beyond Bows and Arrows, you do volunteer work. You've done some acting as well, and you go into federal prisons and facilitate sweat lodge ceremonies. How did you become involved with that?
Well, it was 1998. An inmate at Fort Worth facility sent a letter to the radio station, the letter was addressed to Dennis Joaquini, and his plate was full. He could not take care of that commitment, and so he handed me the envelope, says, here, check this out. Maybe you can take care of this. And I did, and got into the prison system, had to do all of the certification to get in there. I've never had to spend a night yet there in the federal prison. And whenever I go out there, it is one of giving the inmates hope and also letting them know that, hey, I've been sober since 1986 and you can be sober as well. And that hopefully you can change your attitude to where you don't have to come back to this facility or other institutions of this nature.
That's a good message, Albert. Really good message. We've got some callers lined up, but before we take the first one, Albert, quickly, I just want to ask you, what is it that makes radio so special?
What makes radio special to me is being able to, individuals I ran into Robert Mirabal on the set of Walker, Texas Ranger, and we were standing on our spots waiting for the camera to start rolling and call action. And I said, Mirabal, I play some music by a guy named Mirabal, and he kind of smiled and said, that's me. And out of that, he was guest star on Texas Ranger several times, and one of those times was over the Thanksgiving break. Invited him to the radio station. He came down, did a flute exhibition, and he and Michael Horse and Byron Chief Moon all came to the station. It was a tight fit, but we made it happen, and the listeners really enjoyed that.
Robert Mirabal from Taos Pueblo, and fascinating. And I know you were part of the Walker, Texas Ranger show as well for about 14 episodes, I think, Albert.
It was 17 episodes. I know exactly how many I was on. Yes, it was a great deal of experience. I always get teased because the very first episode that I was on set as an extra, no speaking part, it was a funeral scene, and for some reason the camera zoomed in on me, and I smiled, and everybody was teasing me, here it is, a funeral, and you're all smiles.
All right. Albert, we got some calls on the line. First up is Stephanie, who is listening online in Durango, Colorado. Hello, Stephanie. You are on the air.
Hi, how are you?
We're doing great. What's your comment,
Good.
Stephanie?
My comment is I volunteer as a radio bluegrass DJ at KGUR Community Radio at Fort Lewis College, and I have been doing this since 2011. I host a bluegrass radio show called the Resbilly Breakdown Bluegrass Show, and I am Navajo and Apache, and I just wanted to, my comment was that I enjoy volunteering and doing this radio show for a lot of reasons. On a personal level, I love bluegrass, and I am occupying spaces that are predominantly, bluegrass music is a very white-centric type of music form. So for me to be, DJing this type of music and relaying this type of music surprises both sides of the aisle, both the white listeners and Native listeners. And so I just wanted to mention that, and also that it's reinforcing the idea that we as Native people are in these contemporary spaces, and that, that we're not monoliths and that we're not homogenized, and that we do all these different things that break stereotypes.
Mm-hmm. Stephanie, great call. And yeah, I imagine, a native person hosting a bluegrass show, listeners might not expect that. But it's also important to note that radio in general throughout its history has been a predominantly, white dominated medium. So thank you so much, Stephanie. Durango, Colorado. Next up, we have Manuel from Oglala, South Dakota, who is listening on Keeley Radio. Hello, Manuel. You're on the line.
Good morning. I'm just going to mention that in 1979, I learned to edit at a radio station in Boulder, Colorado on reel to reel. That was way back when. Anyhow, the Boulder radio station is called KGNU, and they have a radio program there for young people, and the person that's running it has been there for decades. Mine was, I was there in 1979, so yeah, the program has been going for many years. Just thought I'd mention that. Thank you, and have a good day.
Well, thank you, Manuel, and have a good day as well. And I wasn't around during the reel days, but I've heard the stories about what it took to sometimes just a pair of scissors and some tape and whatever else had to come into play to make those shows work. Thank you so much for calling in. We've got another caller on the line. This is Jen, listening in East Texas. Hi, Jen.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my call. I couldn't resist calling in and giving a shout out to Albert Old Crow. But I have to say that what makes radio shows so important is that it brings people into the Native American community who may never have been connected at all and have a Native ancestry, or I'm a direct descendant of Cherokee. So in 1986, I was going to school in Dallas, and I had never been, and I had begun to listen to community radio there. Thank goodness for community radio, and now those on air and online, because I listen to them all. But when Frank McLemore and Dennis were in charge, they had played powwow music, and at that point in my life, I'd never heard of powwow music, and I was totally immediately enthralled and addicted. And they announced a powwow that was coming up, and I called the number to join in, and Frank Tonkame answered it, and he said, yes, here's what it's going to be, and bring 2 cakes. And then he put me to work, and then he brought me into the community, and from then on, I worked, also moved into Austin, where eventually I hosted a radio show, because when I got to Austin, I was looking for my relatives, and my radio show was called Native Horizons, and it was so popular that people sent in money, and I finally eventually took it into a nonprofit that we funded films and weaving shows, and we had guests on air, and we played music, and we had national Native news. So this is the importance of radio, and one of the radio stations that I listened to in the very beginning was, of course, Native Voice One, where I heard music, which now has become Undercurrents Radio, the founder of that. So it's just awesome. And I thank you. And Albert, keep up the good work. I've listened to you. I don't call in during the show, but I've been saying I'm going to copy some music and send it to you, though. And I love seeing you at the fundraisers at the Indian Mission Church. So I'll say hello next time.
All right. Albert, go ahead and respond to Jen. Sounds like she's a big fan.
Yeah, Jen, appreciate the shout out. And yeah, I'll see you at the next fry bread eating contest.
There we go. There we go. I want to bring in another guest here before we got a couple minutes before we have to go to break. And his name is Colton Prince. He's in Anchorage, Alaska. He's 16 years old, and he's the owner of 98.5 Music Alaska. Colton, hello again. It's so great to have you on the show. And you have an internet radio station. Tell us a little bit more about that. What goes into producing it?
Sorry there. For some reason, it said call failed there. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I wanted to know what goes into producing your internet radio show.
Oh, well, I mean, just for starters there, for me personally, it takes a lot. I mean, if you want to know how I started, it's a really interesting story there if you want to hear about it.
Yeah, no worries. We're going to take a break in about a minute, but just go ahead and get started, and what you can't finish, we'll finish up on the other side of the break.
Okay, well, the way I started there was when I was 14. It started exactly on August 11th, 2023. And, one night I was originally wanting to start a radio station and just, I completely just fell in love with it. I found a radio broadcasting site. It's called Radio King. I used that for a couple of months. And then we switched platforms and got onto Live 365. That's the broadcasting software that we use.
Okay,
and,
so there's... Yeah, go ahead, Colton.
Yeah, and we still use it to this day. And I just completely, even to this day, I still love radio a lot.
Right. Okay, we're going to take a break, Colton. We're going to come back, and I want to learn a little bit more about your studio. I understand it's a mixed-use space. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. And just a little bit more about what got you started on this path to having your own radio show. Colton Prince, 16 years old, Anchorage, Alaska, owner of 98.5 Music Alaska. Short break, and we'll be right back.
OCO, don't delay, sign them up today. Kids everywhere need health care. Enrolling them in coverage helps ensure they have access to wellness visits and other services. For more information, visit healthcare.gov/coverage or contact your local Indian healthcare provider. A message from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services.
You're listening to Native America Calling. We're celebrating radio today, hearing from Native people with a passion to communicate over the airwaves. You can join the conversation, 1-800-996-2848. We're talking now with Colton Prince. He is the owner of 98.5 Music Alaska. This is an internet radio station. And Colton, before break, I described your studio as a mixed-use space. Is that an accurate description?
I mean, right as soon as I first started, it was all broadcasted under my bunk bed there. Once when I first started, it was a pretty interesting setup. I can't lie.
It sure sounds like. Well, give us a picture of the setup. There are no transmitters or antennas involved. How do people listen?
So that's a really good question, actually. So you can go online there. You could just search our radio station up. See, now, for preference, I personally like Live 365. But you can just go ahead and search our radio station up, search 98.5 Music Alaska, and you can go ahead and straight into it and listen. We have a rock hour and a pop hour. From rock hours from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and the pop hour, where you have a whole bunch of mix and variety from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Colton, you started this radio station 2 years ago. What was your motivation?
Well, honestly, my motivation was my parents. I mean, they're both into music. I mean, for one, or at least for starters, my dad, he was always, into rock music there. And, all of a sudden I just got into it because I just, completely fell in love with rock music. I mean, I still remember the first day I started listening to Metallica there. It's absolutely awesome. And my mom there, she is actually an artist herself. And, I got that motivation from them. And, other radio stations when I was younger, I used to listen to them 24/7. And that's really how I got motivated to get into radio.
Colton, you must hear a lot of people tell you you've got a great voice for radio.
Oh, yeah, I get a whole bunch of people telling me that there. I get actually some people always telling me to say some type of line. And I just go ahead and say it, and, they're absolutely impressed.
Well, give me a little background. Like, how does this work? What time do you air the show? How long does it take you to put it all together? And I understand you're homeschooled, so do you work the show into your daily routine?
Yeah, so it is Monday through Friday. We've been taking a couple-week break here because just some of the stuff that has been going on with our radio station. We've been having some technical difficulties recently, but we got it all fixed there, and we are ready to go and broadcast. So it starts off from 5 to 9 in the morning. It is Colton in the morning, and it is weekdays from Monday through Friday.
And then you start your studies when you wrap at 9 a.m.?
Yeah, but sometimes, usually what we'll do is sometimes we'll pre-record segments of the show, but then at the same time, some of the show is live.
Okay. Colton, who's your audience?
Well, we get mostly people there from the Copper River Valley. We got mostly people, let's see, it's mainly around Alaska. We share local news there, and of course, definitely play really good rock music. So that's basically what we do. And we like to entertain our listeners. And, we like to know if you do not like a song, and we would like to also know why.
Colton, do you have a specific favorite moment to share from this time working with your station?
Oh, yeah. I got a whole bunch there. Let's see. For a specific favorite moment was the moment there that I got mostly all the work done, getting onto Live 365. I felt so relieved getting onto that radio broadcasting software. And just knowing that, I don't have to worry, about having to transfer over, it made me feel so relieved about everything there.
Colton, I want to ask you one more favor before we go to another guest. I want you to give our listeners a shout out, say you're listening to Native America Calling. Today is National Radio Day. How about it?
Okay. All righty. You're listening to Native American Calling. Happy National Radio Day.
All right. Wonderful. Colton, best of luck to you moving forward, okay? I'm really happy for all your success.
Yes, thank you so much there.
You bet. You bet. We've got another guest who is joining us now from the road. He is also in Alaska. His name is Bob Peterson, and he is the network manager for Native Voice One. He is Yupik. Good morning, Bob, and welcome back to Native America Calling.
Good morning from the AK, Sean. Good to be with you. Happy National Radio Day.
Absolutely. Now, I do want to make a note here. Native Voice One is the distribution division of Koahnic Broadcasting Corporation. That is Native America Calling's parent company. Now, Bob, you've been in radio a long time yourself. You've hosted your own show, and now you oversee dozens of Native-produced shows, hundreds of radio stations. What led you down this path?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I'm a product of public radio. I'm the oldest son of Wayne, who is German-Danish descent, and Joyce, who's Yupik Peterson out in Bethel, Alaska. My hometown station is KYUK. Shout out to you folks there on the banks of the Kuskokwim. I also have an older half-brother out in Scammon Bay listening on KCUK in Chivak. Also, so Native America Calling reaches from the top of the U.S. in Utqiagvik on KBRW, and we're carried on the internet station in Salamanca, New York, with Full Moon Radio. 80 stations carrying Native America Calling, and Native America Calling was a presence in my young adulthood, and I remember it really challenging some of the paradigms that I had growing up westernized. And it was a slow boil that continues to this day, where it shapes and informs who I am. And being with Native Voice One, I've been here for 8 years this past May, and it's been fantastic. It's being able to see the importance of Indigenous broadcasting and really hone what I call the 3 Ps of Indigenous broadcasting: principles, perspectives, and presence of the Native American. And it's a conviction of mine that Native broadcasting and the stories that we have to tell is a healing balm brought from the indigenous culture that we have. It brings to a healthier society. And the healing doesn't happen by accident. It happens when our stories are supported, protected, and made accessible across the airwaves, online, and also in the classrooms and communities, as it's been exhibited strongly on the previous guests you've had on the show and since the inception of NAC.
Mm-hmm. Principles, perspectives, and presence. I really like that, Bob. And one of the things I want to talk with you about is some of this funding disruption that is occurring right now, specifically with the shutdown of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And we're going to play an audio file. This is Republican Senator Mike Rounds of South Dakota. As Congress worked to eliminate support for public broadcasting, Senator Rounds secured $9.4 million for 35 radio stations across 11 states. Now, that money comes from climate projects and was previously appropriated to the Department of Interior. There are nearly 60 tribal radio stations across the country. And our NAC producer, Sol Traverso, spoke with Senator Rounds about how that money will help stations that now face a budget shortfall.
The ones that we identified, there were 35 different radio stations, and those funds for those 35 different radio stations that were specific to Native American reservations have been made whole with the agreement that I've got with the Office of Management and Budget. The other ones, I'm not sure what differentiates them, whether it's a commercial broadcast station or otherwise. But for many of those other ones, they may very well have other resources. For these tribal radio stations that we focused on, as I said before, the vast majority of them, well over 90% of their funding came from this particular grant program. They would not have survived. The other ones probably have a better chance of survival because they have other types of resources coming in that these 35 different stations did not.
And $9.4 million across 11 states might not be enough for tribal radio stations to stay afloat. Can tribal radio stations expect more funding and resources in the future?
Well, actually, this replaces in whole the amount that they were getting from the grants that were being put out by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. So it should be enough for them to continue on in their operations because it simply replaces what would have otherwise been lost. So I think we've got that part taken care of, but naturally, anytime you're relying on government funds for these types of operations, if you can come up with a way in which the community can help to support them, it means more stability in that community long term. And I would most certainly encourage the communities to look at other ways of supporting these as well. But for now, during this period, this next year, the $9.4 million is what was being taken from those radio stations by the rescissions package. We simply replaced it. So as long as they could live with that, it amounts to, in most cases, almost 90% of their total funding, but it's enough to keep them going. And they've been living on it so far. Hopefully they'll be able to make ends meet with this $9.4 million in continued operations for FY26.
That was Senator Mike Rounds of South Dakota discussing his efforts to secure funding for tribal radio stations. An extended version of this interview will be available on our website, nativeamericacalling.com. And Bob, we both work in the business, and this is just on everybody's mind right now. Everybody's talking about it. What do you expect is going to happen long term for tribal radio stations?
Well, that's a great question, and looking into the future, that's a topography that's always changing. But what we do know is that our mission and our goals remain solid and remain the same. We know where we want to go. Now it just seems like there's some difficulty sometimes in being able to achieve that. I just want to assure that not just our native stations, but any community station, Native Voice One will be here as a support for you to be able to provide Indigenous broadcasting and programs. We're here for you. There's a lot of trepidation, a lot of uncertainty from stations that had financial stability, now thrown into financial instability. And if I could throw one more P in the keys of broadcasting is perseverance, and this is something which, out of just all of the demographics that make up our society, the indigenous population has been here from the beginning, and we're still here today despite efforts to not make it so. So I think there's a lot of strength and calm found in that. And so native broadcasting is not able to just have the power to entertain and inform, but to heal. When people hear themselves represented with dignity and accuracy on the air, when they hear language preserved or revived, it reinforces that sense of belonging and agency of what we do. It humanizes us together. It allows stories to not just be headlines. Really appreciate what Stephanie was saying earlier, that we're not just monoliths, and we're not just stereotypes.
Right.
This is a reality, and we're still here, baby.
Yes, we are, Bob. Yes, we are. Let's go back to the phones. We have Clark, who is listening on KUYI Hopi Radio in Hopi, Arizona. Hello, Clark.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I just wanted to let you all know I really appreciate all the services that especially Indigenous and Native America has been providing here for all of us to listen into. And just being a small part of GUI out here at KUII was really an opportunity. And one of the things that I really recall is being given the opportunity to do the first play-by-play of both basketball and football for the radio station is a highlight of my historic momentum with the GUI, and people I know appreciate it because that was all done in our Hopi language and just various things that I had been a part of. And it is certainly a big part of a community, and we need to continue to support that because that's how we're providing the language and services for all our people. And again, thank you to everybody out there being involved in the radio stations.
All right, Clark Tanahungwa calling in from Hopi, Arizona. Appreciate you taking the time, Clark. And we got a little bit of time. We're going to squeeze one more caller in. This is Isaac, who is listening on KBRW in Barrow, Alaska. Hello, Isaac. You've got about a minute. Let's hear it.
Hey, good morning, Harlan. This is Seismic Isaac from KBRW. I'd like to say thank you to all your guests for this National Radio Day. And KBW will be turning 50 years old on December 22. And my 47 years with KBW will be December 1. I've been here since I was 10 years old. I just want you all to know, keep on rocking and keep airing. Neighborhood calling, we've been airing this ever since. And good morning from Barrow, Alaska.
Isaac, thank you so much, brother. 47 years since you were 10 years old. That is very, very, very impressive. Thank you so much. Bob, we've got about a minute here before we got to wrap up the show. Any highlights from NV1 programming you want to share with our listeners before we wrap it up?
Well, the wonderful thing about this is not only do we have Koahnic-produced programs like Native America Calling and National Native News, and our newest addition to that, Our Living Lands, that would tell stories from an Indigenous perspective. But we also work with the Koahnic Broadcasting Corporation, who has two great programs. We have independent producers that are making great content. And in these moments of uncertainty, the path forward is not about asking for permission to exist. It's about providing and proving the value of Indigenous broadcasting through our consistency, our quality, and community partnerships. The presence, the way that we show up, calling in, volunteering at stations. If you're able to send in some moolah, that's always super helpful. But we just enjoy the presence, and we can get through all of this together.
All right. With that, we are out of time. Thank you to our guests, Bob Peterson, Colton Prince, Sarah Lease, and Albert Old Crow, and also the callers who joined us today, and of course, you, our listeners. We do it all for you. And don't forget to join us again tomorrow. We'll look at how federal funding cuts affect access to birth control and a program addressing the health of new and expecting mothers. I'm Sean Spruce. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Support comes from AirTalk Wireless, where individuals who qualify for the Tribal Lifeline program receive an iPhone or Samsung device, unlimited data, calls and texts, and international calling. Learn more at airtalkwireless.com/NAC. Minutes from downtown Anchorage, the Alaska Native Heritage Center is more than a museum. It's where Alaska Native traditions, languages, and arts come alive. There's always something new at the Alaska Native Heritage Center who support this show. More at alaskanative.net.
Hamitaki, don't delay. Sign them up today. Kids everywhere need health care. Enrolling them in coverage helps ensure they have access to wellness visits and other services. For more information, visit healthcare.gov/coverage or contact your local Indian healthcare provider. A message from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services.
Native America Calling is produced in the Annenberg National Native Voice Studios in Albuquerque, New Mexico by Koahnic Broadcasting Corporation, a Native nonprofit media organization. Funding is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting with support from the Public Radio Satellite Service. Music is by Brent Michael Davids. Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.